I'd like to thank the presence of Rodrigo Maia, the president of the Chamber of Deputies, congressman, who has taken ahead a lot of modernization, much modernization in the system for public safety, and also Margarete Coelho, who was the chief of the study group to propose to the executive a number of measures as to the federal government forwarding to the Congress last year, and the Secretary of Defense, Raul Jungmann, ex-Secretary of Defense, who built consensus as to the reform of the public security. Given the delay, I won't make a formal presentation that I had here, but it's worth mentioning some numbers which might help to think of the three authorities here. We have so many evidences as to the change of institutional changes in the sector, and for us in the form of public security, to open the opening of the fourth meeting on a debate with the Congress. And that's very important because we're talking about the house of the people, the reinforcement of the democracy. And there are some evidences. In 2012, we've had a lot of issues on the military police of Ceará for strike with Ceará and several other states. The pandemics also that paralyzed all the lives of people, but also in the economy of crime, so it has an impact with several insecurity issues. And in 2020, violent and intentional deaths have grown 7.1% regarding the same period in 2019. Feminicides have grown 12%. But we have some wins, such as the mega traffic, mega drug dealer, Fuminho, and others. We had a diminishing of the investment of the union and the growth of the mayors and the expense in security that was very important. We've had a growth in violence in legal Amazonia, in deforesting, as we will remind you, and crimes such as the new Cangaço, which was the troopers and bandits, road bandits and others in Brazil. There is a mention to Amapá, who is outside our radar many times, and with the blackout they had recently, we noticed that the scenario in Amapá deserves attention, and the growth in 20% of the assassinated police officers. For example, policeman Derivaldo, who died last week in Rio de Janeiro on the 5th. There was this crime happened. And this sort of activity is not justified. There were children who were dead, Rebecca, for example, and Emily. They joined the 22 people who died in the metropolitan region of Rio de Janeiro only in 2020. So public security gives evidence that we have a situation, and let's see how we can advance. And this is the discussion that we're going to have here. And we also notice that the population notices that the police has to have new standards, but also trusts the police when there is 47% of the growth in policemen that were named for activity. There is a reform in the public security in some issues such as the federative rearrangement of Brazil. So these are technical issues, and I will hand over the floor to the President of Deputies Chamber, Rodrigo Maia, in the Congress. Thank you, Leonardo. I thank you for the opportunity of being here. and I will have to preside the Chamber of Deputies, so I don't have much time here. I'm not a specialist in security, public security, but it is a threat for our state, Rio de Janeiro. We've built a program with President Michel Temer. I think the big problem for coordination is the extension of the Ministry of Safety of Public Security, and that extension and it's going into the Ministry of Health, which has the priority of the combat to corruption. There's a problem in that transfer. There is a problem with the problem of public security regarding SUSP, the program for public security. That takes out some power on our part for all these important agendas. For example, some 2 months ago, Deputy Margarete, you delivered a group of positions, and one of them was the initiative of the federal government about the combat of violence against women, wasn't it? And perhaps because the president did not have, in the Ministry of Public Security, he did not have a caterer that could have responsibility on specifically that. And we have a group of programs organized by Deputy Margarete and other people. We have some projects, which is the most important initiative of the executive power. You cannot go forward. I think that the loss of the Ministry of Public Security was a victory of all the presidents that came before. They always transferred the responsibility for public security to the federal governments, to the state governments, as if this wasn't a united government. So this omission of the previous governments of their responsibility, especially because many of them knew what generate violence in our state, and these are federal crimes. So President Michel Temer extinguished this ministry, not because of his own will, but nowadays the President of the Republic regrets having finished with the Ministry of Security because it made it possible to have an articulation and to make it possible to have discussion on issues that are so important, such as combat to, well, we knew that, or we see the increase in feminine aggression to women, which has grown during the pandemics. And we know that there are militias that take over not only the city of Rio de Janeiro, but in the whole of the state of Rio de Janeiro. They've blocked cable TV in the interior of the Rio. They put the pirate TV, hacked TV, and the residents are forced to pay for this pirate TV. So this is like this structuration of a society in a territory that you don't know. We only see the capital and going towards the interior. This militia town is Cabo Frio, a beautiful city in the state of Rio, on the beach, next to the capital, where the militias are already taking over outside the capital. And that needs a refoundation of the theme of public security. And I believe that this federal government should use the SUSP, which is an instrument that was debated for more than 10 years and approved in when Mr. Jungmann was as a figured as Secretary of Defense of Security. So we had a field in which we could have a field where we could work together, the states and the union. That's my point of view. Perhaps Margarete would be the person that mostly understands about the theme. And I'm sure that Raul Jungmann will be having a very good debate so the Chamber of Deputies may speak, hear, transform, and take advantage of this environment so that we can take ahead this debate to the inside of the Chamber of Deputies in the plenary meetings there. I want to thank the invitation again and put myself as a deputy at your disposition. Thank you for your opening. Doubtlessly, your role has been important in this issue. and which is an issue. And your mandates have been issuing opinions about guns control, gun possession control, and some other aspects that have had influence in public security. So I want to thank you as to how we can make instruments that use intelligence and respecting the Federative Pact, not the way we have said, and Deputy Margarete also reminded us, trying to apply the same old recipes that never worked, thinking that they would work one day. We have to advance with substantive changes, and the Congress is the best venue for this debate. Thank you. Thank you. I'll hand over the floor now to Deputy Margarete Coelho, who was the coordinator of penal work group as to what has been the treatment of the public security agenda in the Congress in the last few months. Thank you, Renato. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I'd like to greet all those who are part of this virtual desk, Deputy Rodrigo Maia, who is always concerned in keeping up this debate of public security, and he keeps it updated in the House. It is always provoked by the profusion of law projects and decrees, and that has as a focal point public security. We owe these people the SUSP's single system of public security, which presented a plan that is excellent and spectacular for us to put in practice. The pity it is that we haven't activated it as it was thought and planned. And to you, Renato, and to the forum, my homage to you for the concern that you have with public security, the quality of the data. It is a safe issue when we're talking about the data and facts. Whether we are from the academy or from the public institutions, we all have, as a source of research, when we're dealing with safety issues, security issues, we count on the data issued by the forum. Thank you for letting me be here in this opening. And this is one of the biggest events on public security, if not the biggest one. And this is a theme that provokes impact on the society. I have held several public mandates. I'm always concerned with social issues, civil society, organized civil society, and I try to make of that the great propulsion of my mandate. In all the research that we have made and all the surveys for our plan, for state plan of public security, from all the data that we have, the great bottleneck on the quality of life of people is much more in the public security than in all other issues. In principle, when we talk about quality of life, the concern about public security among the population is together with jobs available and others. It is a very challenging issue because it's very transversal. It has connection among all institutions. I believe that here, Renato and my dear audience, if you permit me to say, I can make a prognosis. In this lack of dialogue, this lack of interaction, not only between the police forces, but between our institutions, this is a necessary dialogue, an interaction that is necessary. And to discuss public security in what is from the civil police, the military police, governance of the state, the legislative, what are the attributes of each one of the parts of power. The fact is that we do not have a panoramic vision of public security. This theme does not respect borders, does not respect any limits. It passes from one municipality to another, one state from another to another. If you press it on one place, it transfers itself to another place. We do not have border police to make a dialogue, not only between federative agents, but all the institutions that are involved in public policies. The challenge that was put to us today is to talk about the role of National Congress in terms of public security. I would say that we are out of focus in our role. When we are elected as congressmen and women in campaign, we talk a lot about what we can do as to legislation. Of course, in the system of destructured penal system, that could be a good starting point, but we need governance. Public security is very much linked to governance. We do not have clear protocols that could promote interaction, union. So we have several institutions within public security, but at the same time, we have very little results with the model that's been adopted until now. In the House, in the Chamber of Deputies, more than 5,000 law projects that were protocoled in 2019, and more than 1,200, almost 1,300 projects by Solda Paz is another institution that works very strongly with validity of data and several types of research. But 1,254 projects are about public security. From the system of penal program, increase in penalties, new types of criminalities. There is always an attempt to make the system more and more strict. But the whole system has a mainstay. You understand that you have to put more people into prison at a younger age and more people. But that's the goal in most people. But we do not understand that this hasn't worked, especially because we have a chaotic penitentiary system which has failed. Instead of combating criminality, it is a great feeder of criminality, a great school for crime. So when you talked about the prison system, there is a university, a crime university inside. It's a bad question to discuss, but we do not make the qualification of the people. And with organization or with management of risk management. So when people are there for an indeterminate kind of sentence, the Ministry of Justice and Security will not inform the number of people in custody in Brazil, where they are, how they are, even more so because we have a floating population in the penitentiary system. 40% of the prisoners in Brazil nowadays are provisional. So that gets very complicated when you see the same person being put in jail several times, and each time for graver or for more serious crimes. So now we do not have this unified vision of what we have or what we need for public safety, public security, because safety or unsafety happens within the community, and we cannot put them in shelves or in separated from one issue to another. So interaction among the police, the same communication system, so that everybody knows what one police force is doing, what the other police force is doing, because we do not work in prevention also. We do not work in prevention because we do not have the possibility of communicating to forecasts, for example, when that bank is going to be exploded and robbed, the new Congresso, as you mentioned, and especially in small cities in the interior of the country, have no public security structure. just for an order, many of those who are hearing us have come through the simultaneous translation room, and they say they can only hear the translation. The person has to come out of that room and click in the next room so that they will hear only Portuguese. People are hearing you with simultaneous translation in English, so they have a doubt about what is happening. So they all have to get into the Portuguese room so that everybody can hear you fully. Thank you. Sorry for the interruption. You can continue, please. Okay, so we have to understand that public safety, public security is not a system of public perception and not only prison. It's a whole from a well-illuminated street to close the door of the schools when the students get in and open it when they go out only, and keep it closed during classes. This is part of the public security. We have to understand that without this interaction, we will not be able to get to this unified plan. We have the National Plan of Public Security, the single system of public security. It's there, it's put together, it's enforced. And we have an enormous vocation to make it work, but we are not able to put it in practice. The biggest reform of the penal system in Brazil was the anti-crime package. It was coming from the Ministry of Justice. It went through the legislative with the Minister Sérgio Moro. This was very much debated in society. The Public Security Forum and the Brazilian Public Security Forum, there's been a lot of debate with society. And also that's the focus on the issue of putting more people in jail, putting them at a younger age, leaving them there a longer time in prison, and make the system strict as a whole. Progression of regime, all these things should be more strict. There are about 15 measures to make the system more strict. But at no time, you see, there are 17 laws that were somehow captured by the anti-crime package, but never was public security an issue there. We talked about protocols, modern protocols that permit anywhere that these protocols can act, will permit us to have a vision of the system. We will have precise data, updated data, so that we can make a public policy, because public security is public policy, right? Here in the Congress, we go through a moment of, we are one of the biggest parts of it. It's the bullet front inside the House. And we have more than 40 deputies that are belonging to some of the polices. And the debate is very much centered in that issue. Public security. We have to bring the single system of public security, but not even the first report of the Convention on Public Security was updated. We need to know who is doing what, who wants to anticipate himself or herself, and not just putting out fires as we are today. Our role here, besides that, in terms of the system of penal perception, with more robustness. We have to work also the sanitary issue, because one thing that I've noticed, and perhaps the information that we had, is that we are all debating with society. We are looking at the eye of society, saying that we are concerned with this, but in the budgetary issues, we're very distant from being able to do these things. Even us, the parliamentary members, the members of Congress who have our own law propositions, are hindered by the budgets of public security, right? So we need a system, whether it be in the model that we have already. In fact, the Ministry of Justice opened public consultation to discuss the national plan for public security and the system of public security. I quickly report on also women's security. In proposal that was presented to the executive power in the Chamber of Deputies is that we have a national plan for women's security. Feminicide, for example, rape and violence against women is bigger and bigger. It looks like a backlash that comes from the advances that we have gotten very much in with very hard work, and our single system of public security has to be more visible. We need the details of it so that we have new protocols. We cannot wait for women to be more protected when she's not assisted by the public powers. We have the police agency for women, but as with all laws of the military, state polices and civil polices of the states, they demand a negative quota of women, and only 20% of the vacancies can be occupied by women, even though they go first. In all the other places, we have only 20% of the women approved. That is the bias, thinking that public security is done by brute force and not by intelligence as well. Not that the men are not intelligent, but the presupposition that men are not strong enough, physically strong enough, we might think that they are very good, smart snap shooters, and they are good executors of public policies. And this holistic view, this general view, this panorama that we do not have, and we are failing. It's no good having the best system of penal perception if we have weak institutions, penitentiaries that are full to the top, and women who are not belonging to the system. Because of question of survival, youngsters are also becoming educated in prisons and then coming back to society in a more dangerous status. I am at your availability for the debate. Thank you, Deputy Margarete Coelho, and I hand over to Minister Raul. Thank you, Ricardo. I thank you very much for the invitation to the Brazilian Forum of Public Security. As Margarete Coelho just said, whom I greet now, she has been a great contributor to the advancement of public security, not only legislative, but also executive. And I thank very much. This is the biggest event of public security in Brazil, and it's a reference for outside the country. Before I speak, I would like to say that those who have been present at our passage through the Ministry of Safety, of Public Security, whatever we could do that in 10 months, 300 days, a great part of it that was due to this forum, to Renato, Samira, and society, and so many other institutions that contributed to us, with us. During the period that we were there, we worked with society in a full-time basis. Institutions that have character and seriousness to contribute, and the contribution that was given to us by Renato and by the forum, I will synthesize all this. The national policy for public security was built four hands by the forum and a competent team. And I would like to thank the people we invited to participate in that. And that's our statement. Let's begin with a balance of the year. First observation is a sad one. There was a growth of homicides that are violent. This dropped in 2018. It accelerated its drop in 2019, and now it's grown up again. Several factors. I believe that the fall in 2018 was given by the efforts of state governments at the eve of elections, where their candidates were concerned about public security. And coming from the pandemic, the fiscal situation that they had made it so that they could no longer invest in what they could do. So the main factor is, I will point them out.
So since you are talking about life, well, it's important to have a return. The return of the ascending curve that was broken in the year of 2018 and 2019. I believe that there's a certain predictability on the issue that we can talk about during the debates. Secondly, negative, the continuity of the negation by the Supreme Court to analyze the project that aims at establishing a limit between drug dealer and drug user. We know, in regards to the drug policy, that there is a differentiation between user and drug dealer, but it has no criteria to point to which is which. So the result is young people who don't have any criminal record and they are arrested with a few grams of cannabis or cocaine, they are going to be taken to prison and live there together with murderers and other criminals. And that has tragic consequences, not only to these young people, but to society as well. Why is that? Because these young people, we have around 2,500 prison centers in Brazil, and most of them are controlled by these criminal factions. There is around 70 of them. And for these people who are taken to prison, if they want to survive, they have to associate themselves to these criminal groups, these factions that control these prisons. And what happens then? When these young people are taken to prison because of a low impact crime, simple theft, or someone who's a drug user, and they will probably become slaves and soldiers of these organized crime groups. So it is key that the Supreme Court can establish this. One of the justices has given his opinion, but the court keeps on delaying that, keeps on postponing that, and that is quite complicated, and it affects thousands and thousands of lives that end up in the prisons and unfortunately become soldiers of these organized crime factions. There is also the point of some intentions of having the unified security system that has been postponed all the time. Brazil has never assigned constitutional competences to the central power. In other words, the federal government has the architecture of public security and cannot assign public security competences. As Margarete says, it all remains at the state level, and that means that we have never had a national security system, neither a national policy of public security. So that's why when the Chamber of Deputies began some actions during the tenure of President Temer, tried to have an integration at national level, integrating the armed forces, police forces, federal policies, road policies, all of them together so that other instruments can be created and make our security policy to migrate from a policy that is obscure to a policy that is based on evidence, that is based on data. there are some signs that the current minister may start to think on this implementation. Well, we'll be glad if that happens because that is key. We must have the unified system of public security to deal with this issue. Another comment in regards to the year of 2019 and 2020 is the continuity of the loosening policy of gun control. We know that the more guns we have, more deaths occur. So we see this bet of the federal government of increasing the number of weapons, and that results in a higher number of deaths. And that is terrible indeed. Here, we should remind ourselves that in this aspect, the National Congress was very important because it has refused several decrees, and that has been very important. We would like to congratulate Margarete and the entire Chamber of Deputies for this work that has been done. Furthermore, we also keep on going slowly in terms of budget. I am afraid that we had a legal change so that the sports lotteries could be reverted into public security. That would be part of a national fund of public security, but unfortunately, that has been rolled back. Some other programs, which, for instance, the program for quality of life of policemen, that aims at improving the quality of lives of policemen and policewomen who take care of our lives. We want to thank them for their very hard work. So far, I haven't seen no new words about this project. Funds for the improvement of the quality of life of policemen and policewomen. Margarete, that would be interesting so that we could demand for that at the Congress, and the application of the unified system of public security. That's part of law. That's no plan of any given minister. That's law that should be executed. So I'd like to ask Margaret, who is our spokesperson, to demand that and call the ministers and agencies and ask what is being done for the implementation of the unified system of public security. I believe that she's very well able to do that for us. And moving on, we should also mention that the anti-crime law that was really enhanced and had very good repercussions and contributions. Even though some of these contributions, sometimes when they touch on the correctional system, the prison system, which is my nemesis, in my opinion, if we don't have a national program that is focused on vulnerable young people who are poor, who have low education levels, have no income, if we don't have that, this national program that extends the hand to these young boys and girls, unfortunately, they will end up in the correctional system, considering that 50%, 55% of those who are inside the prisons, they are young people. To summarize, I could say that this year, well, we haven't had major achievements. There's not much to celebrate. This has been an exceptional year, perhaps the weirdest year of all our lives, but I think we can say that there is an attitude of resistance that have been manifested by the Chamber of Deputies. Have helped us not to have an even worse year, but we do need to improve a lot. I'd like to tell this message to everyone so that we can have a national policy of public security. And public security, instead of being just a police problem, can become an issue that is discussed by the society, because the society that is afraid, concerned, and doesn't realize that these security services are essential to their lives, unfortunately, they have what I would call a democratic regression and ends up supporting ridiculous measures that are anti-democratic and go against life. And that's why I'd like to say that we must really, really improve the public security in our country. Thank you very much. Thank you, former Minister Raul Jungmann. I believe that we have had very interesting and important first speeches, and I'd like to invite you to think about some issues. For those of you who don't know, even though we have an audience, we have around 1,500 people taking part in this session only. People who are watching us right now. The unified system of public security that was passed in 2018 provided two major systems. The first is SINAPED, that is the assessment. The first assessment that is made with the help of the Chamber of Deputies would be carried out after 2 years of the unified system implementation. But we haven't even had SINAPED installed yet. That was specially created for making a monitoring and assessment of the work that is being carried out. So this system, SINAPED, haven't even had its members nominated so that we can finally have an assessment on what has been done or not. So, and based on the information access law, we got to know that the unified system of public security was being implemented by 16 units of the Federation for the construction of their state plans for public security. And the federal government, up to June of 2020, had not implemented any structuring action. From June on, some measures were taken, and a public audience was appointed for the policy to be updated, but that hasn't happened. The other system is the professional appreciation. We should not forget the suicide rates for policemen and women, and they are a shame, absolutely a shame to our country. How can we better appreciate these public security professionals? As Rodrigo Maia said, we are creating conditions for not only reproducing the structural racism, but reproducing the extreme violence that reaches society at all its levels. We should remember that 58% of the or that's a major problem. We are having some technical issues. Just a moment. Okay, I apologize. Now we are back on here. So the government has now announced the amount of 700 million, but if there is no qualified investment, a year from now, this investment has to be doubled because this is an amount that goes up almost for consumption. So what's the role of the Congress, of the Chamber of Deputies, so that we can move forward in this task of inspecting the implementation of the unified system of public security? Well, that's such a complex question. I'll try my best to answer it. Well, talking about this legislation, that was extremely complicated because we had this interruption because of the pandemic. But we are at a moment, I could say, living a very fertile moment with a lot of discussion on public security here on the Chamber of Deputies. We had previously the anti-crime project with 16 laws focused on several different spheres and cases. These laws were discussed and discussed again. Nowadays, this process was interrupted because of the pandemic, and we can say that it has taken the focus out of the debate. And now we have another focus, that is the increase of violence during the pandemic, violence against women, the increase in the number of homicides. So the pandemic has made us somewhat lose our focus on this discussion. Now we have the new code of the penal process that will complement and everything that is now related to the process of the penal plan. We are going to have our own commission now. So now we have a commission that is discussing money laundering so that we can fight against corruption and these lone wolves that work quite strongly sometimes inside the budgeting agencies. We are also discussing now, well, we have money laundering, we also have improbity and some other laws that are within this public security system. I believe that unified system and with its commission, that must be demanded. We must have this discussion with people who are in a position to make it. That's the commitment that we need to make. If we want to prepare a report, we must to have the executive, the legislative, Ministry of Justice. We would need almost an integrated management office to deal with all these participants. So, as I was saying at the beginning, we don't have data, we don't have any figures, we don't have statistics, we don't have, if it weren't for the civil society institutions, we would have almost anything, we would have nothing to work with. So I believe that at the beginning we need to demand it from the states and the federal government. We must understand that the protocols from São Paulo are different from those that we have in Piauí. So how can we inspect all these, step on the brake, try to get everything organized first. And I believe that the work that is being carried out by President Rodrigo Maia has been really helpful. And it was ever present. The Chamber of Deputies was really united, even though that there was somewhat controversial. There was this controversy in regards to the reputation of Minister Moro, but we kept ourselves focused on this issue. So, well, I believe that's what we need to do. We need to demand for data, statistics, qualified data, so that we can monitor the quality of the expenditures. I believe that no manager can sit on a chair and believe that he or she has the possibility of give orders for expenses. No, there should be a plan. There should be the inspection of the quality of the expenditures. It's not about making notice to bids and that's all. No, we need to have other concern in our minds. We need what we are going to spend and spend with conviction and certainty. And the Chamber of Deputies has to follow all these activities closely. The idea is that we could have a commission, a permanent commission of monitoring. We have a commission that is more focused on the unified system of public safety so that we can have an analysis of how it is working. I believe that is a relevant demand that we are hearing from others and we should take into consideration. Well, that's quite interesting. Taking the idea of having a permanent inspection commission, I believe that there is no other way around it. I don't say that we could have maybe a unified court of auditors, but something like that. I I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we could have something different from what we had previously. We have previously the help from consultancies, yes, but what the Court of Auditors showed that it was important is that there was a need for governance. Fortunately, they had a very low power of enforcement, so it is quite hard to change the organizational culture. But anyway, former minister, do you have any comment on how we could create any attributes to coordinate these efforts? Well, I believe that these initiatives mentioned by Margaret, they are great. Yes, I've been hearing them, and I think they are excellent. I also believe that in the Chamber of Deputies, I insist on that because the unified system of public security is a child of the Chamber of Deputies. As a matter of fact, we need the Chamber of Deputies to approve it, or perhaps maybe deny it, but perfect it anyhow. So this is a product of the Chamber of Deputies of our country, and that's the need of our country. And it has been for a very long time. So the answer to that Margaret said a few moments ago, that's music to our ears. And the anti-crime project was conducted during the tenure of Minister Moro. And it's important to remind ourselves that we prepare the policies discussing it with the Court of Auditors and some other agencies, the Public Attorney's Office, and so on. So when the minister came, the things were not different from that. I have a question that is important to make. The report that was published allows adjustments and improvements. It's impossible to have a perfect program, but why hasn't it been implemented? Why hasn't it received any improvements? It seems to me that when we send it to the controllership of the union, it's a kind of a process that postpones the implementation of the unified system of public security. So it ends up coming back to the Ministry of Justice and nothing really happens. So what was the point of sending it to the controllership of the union? Okay, good. Maybe we can make it better, but that was not the case. Nothing has been done, absolutely nothing. So there are some other points that you don't need. As Margaret said, may need to create in the cities and the states, you need to have certain councils for issues on public security. So what's the problem of integrating the society, the police forces to this work? As far as I can remember, throughout these 2 years, you may correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that we have had only one meeting of the National Council on Public Security, a single meeting. If there has been any other, somebody tell me, please, because I don't know about it. So it doesn't depend on the controllership of the union to do that. So I think that it is related as well to the issue of SINAPED, that system. That would be a curatorship, so that we could have, as Margaret said, well, we need to look at the budget. Society pays for that. Is our money being well employed? Is it will be being well spent? Is it giving result? Which one is giving us results? So society can finally have the social control. How can it have a social control if there is no policy based on evidences? Why hasn't this been done? What's the reason behind it? That shouldn't depend on the controllership or anything else. Another important point, a very important point among many others, let's remind ourselves, this is the work mostly by the Chamber of Deputies. They are responsible for that. But there was a provision for a national controllership of police forces. We could, for the first time, integrate the work that would be completely new for us. We have never had that. Another essential point for us, Margarete, that's decisive, data and information. In other words, the public security in Brazil is the kingdom of oblivion and obscurity. Very recently, we never had, we could not find national data on infractions, on violence in Brazil. Who does that? The Brazilian Forum, so many other NGOs such as Igarapé, Sol da Paz, the society went after that, and that would be the responsibility of the state. But I ask you, how can we have a good public security without consolidated data? I mean, you must be kidding me. So, regardless of the unified system of public security, it was provided in that document, and the state should take care of that because they are the primary sources of information, and that hasn't worked out well. So now we have a huge work in front of us so that we can maybe finally have a chart with data with criteria accepted by all the states. So my question is, so what's going to happen now? These are things that could be moving forward, and they are absolutely relevant for us to reduce this level of insecurity that makes us, once again, it ends up exceeding and reaching up to the point of causing a democratic regression when we end up making completely absurd choices that don't contribute anything for us to revert the situation. We have 3 questions that I'd like to redirect to you so that you can answer the ones that you feel most comfortable. There's a question that when we talk about public security and police forces, we don't talk about the regulation of police forces, which is something provided by law. And law says that it will regulate the functions of each of the police forces. I believe that this is an important point for us to understand. Maybe there is a tension zone between institutions. We haven't thought about that yet. I would like to connect that to another question that asks, in your opinion, the laws of the military police could regulate part of what is provided in the law. What is your opinion on the capacity that these laws could have of solving the problem, or maybe even, unfortunately, and barriers that we often find between different police forces for the integration? And Inspector Fernando Lourenço mentioned that 95 billion was spent on 2019, and the union 3.8%. And the states themselves had to pay for the overtimes of police forces. But the question is, how can we create an environment, thinking about the regulation of paragraph 7? How can we think about an agenda with which we can move forward? The organic laws are enough for this task, or eventually we will need to do more, as it has been mentioned here. So let's just change the order this time. So Raul Jungmann, Foreign Minister, if you'd like to answer, please go ahead. I believe your microphone is muted. Mm, My idea was just, I just wanted to suggest if you could hear Margarete first, because she's more updated than I am, and then I can answer. Well, that's a very crunchy question. Well, when I was getting ready to come to this debate, I was reading about the quality and the issues that are most mentioned, that are more mentioned here. And there is a very important question of police forces. There are 4 to 5 draft laws on that. I believe these organic laws, sometimes they fall into the temptation of become corporativists. They think more on the advantages of the careers The system that we have today, it doesn't penalty people who are killed by accident, but the system also penalizes the policemen and policewomen. People who die very often are policemen and women, so the families of these deceased policemen and women become very complicated when they die. We were preparing the anti-crime laws. I must be sincere in saying that I had never really seen any police forces really requesting these aspect of excluding any illicit action. There was this charge by the Ministry of Justice in order to approve this aspect that provided for the excluding any illicit activity. But if we look overall, could place policemen under risk when they needed to use excessive force or force. So this is a very complicated discussion, especially because of this competition that we find sometimes between police forces, this dispute for space and competences between police forces. There has been no good level of integration. I believe that very well discussed, but I really stand for the integration. We have some colleagues who defend this issue with a lot of property, this draft law, so that we can have a commission here, but this is a quite complicated debate. If we don't think originally about public security, we will keep on suffering as we are now, losing by a very large margin, compromising the life quality and expanding public budget and wasting human resources. How many lives are lost in these?
Sometimes what we need is to take someone who is not from the militancy, but that has the technique and enough knowledge to organize all this. Many times, those who are too near cannot see the look of someone who's too near is not is a bit clouded. So I believe that we need a concert of opinions, a strategy that not necessarily might be coordinated by militants, but technicians of the area who are able to make this system work in a way that might be less chaotic and more in a concert, like an orchestra. Thank you, Deputy Minister. Let's not make it easy for you, right? After her response, because she was giving it all to you in a tray, but Vosescu Lima da Silva also puts forth that if we can ponder the participation of the municipal police, or rather the municipalities' participation in this process. Eric Mayer also talked about how to think of that in a federative system such as ours in Brazil. How can we think of a solid federative system of ours and public security in the municipalities? Yeah, well, I praise you. Yes, now I get it. You scoundrel. But I'm praising you, and you put, the fire into my piece here. Well, you see, Margarete, you see how people are not reprehensive. You see, it's life isn't fair. Life isn't fair. Well, anyway, that's the way it is. But let's talk about the municipality, please. I am favorable, and that is a very positive tendency. In fact, it's a failure of our constitution in Article 104, cited here already, public safety, public security does not exist in the municipalities we live in, right? I believe 90% of the population lives in cities, which is absurd. But anyway, there is no inclusion in the federal government in public security. Well, what about the federal police? Yeah, but the federal police takes care of only some categories of penalties. There's drug trafficking. There is some repercussion on the states and the federal police. Yes. But when you go to the annals of whatever happens, you can say that 70% is spent by the states, and the union only the union's only cost is the salaries of the federal police. So the crimes against assets, that's all the state polices, right? Municipal and state police. And you don't have the municipalities. Sorry, no, not the municipalities. The municipalities is not within that structure. There is the military, the municipality police, yes, but the municipality should involve more. And we have problems with that. Who surveils the municipal police? Who surveils them? That's a failure. That's a defect. We need organs, police organs or military organs that military police organs that have to have the surveillance from the outside, right? But they don't exist. So you have excellent military police in the municipalities, but you have municipal police, and many of them are hearing us, and I make a point in saying that they are, I'm considered as a patron of these municipal polices. But you have small municipal police that act as a Praetorian guard of the mayor only. And who trains these guys? Where is the auditorship of these guys? Where is the training of these guys? So nowadays they're around 100,000, right? And in good part of them are through liminares won by injustice, and they start to operate. But what I ask is, where did they get their guns? Where are they kept? Who surveils training? How is the controllership of these polices, municipal polices? Who does it? So there is a number of defects that have to be faced by my house, the legislative power, and another task for Deputy Margarete, who is there. Here goes. You see, you will come out with a basket of tasks here, Margarete. But she has the capacity, visibility, and thrust to do that together with the House of Deputies. There are so many causes, but I'm using, or I'll try to dare to say something else to Margarete. About illicitous actions, for example, this has been quite detailed in the process code, right? It's a closed issue and I don't have to touch that. But regarding, well, even though I believe in the legislative capacity of the Congress, it is fundamental for democratic societies as ours. But what I think is that what happens, or how is the debate? How does it happen? The national debate about public security. Open turn on the TVs, read the newspapers, and come to the social, or rather unsociable networks. Where is the debate? The debate is in the violence on the streets. I'm on the street. In a home closed up, they're locked up in my house. I'm free of that. But what if I'm in the street? We do not feel safe in the streets. That's reality. Hey, let's go have a dinner. And I look at my watch and I say, no, not at this time. Oh, maybe, hey, let's go to that restaurant. Let's go to that cinema. Let's go to that neighborhood. No, I'm not. We're conditioning our lives, taking into account the crime. Look at our lives. It's a fantastic thing to live in a city, but you have to live with strange people. But you live with your relatives, your friends. This is a private place. But if you put your foot on the sidewalk, You see the city that is a marvelous construction to live with another person that you don't know. But how do we ascertain this? You have laws, right? So the city is beautiful. How do you walk the streets? How do you go to a bar? How can you ask access to something, you know, in a city? So you have to build a public society, but crime corrodes that, and you start being controlled by the fear of crime and not by public rules. That's how public rules are. When I was a congressman, there was a congressman who said in Rio de Janeiro, he said, listen, I had a marriage in the north part of the city and I lived in the south. Now I picked up my family on Friday. I went to a hotel in the north part. I slept there. I woke up in the day of the marriage and then I came back in the daylight. Look at the point that we get. The capacity of crime to destroy society and destroys the public rules. So our debate is always on the streets, and there's no debate about the penitentiary system. It's the biggest system in the world. We have 280,000. It's controlled by 70 factions, and inside the penitentiary, those have to survive. They join these factions. They will have to become soldiers. Anybody will have to become a soldier of one of the factions. Otherwise, he will be punished, or his family will. So the penitentiary system became a home office of organized crime. You know, Margarete, our Renato knows everything. What is the parliamentary member, the member of Congress, that has a reform for the penitentiary system? I want to know who this guy is, because this guy is stopped. If anybody defends human rights, it's human rights of the criminals. It's the other way around, right? You don't discuss drugs policy, right? The measure against it, the laws against it is bad. It's like a drug, right? So the vulnerable youth, we have to give attention. So we have to finish the politicization of the police. Where there is politics in the police, it just crumbles. Corruption. We have to have organisms that are independent and strong. And I thank you for that. Thank you, Minister. Deputy Congresswoman, please give your opinion. I want to talk something about the municipal police. I think the municipal police, nowadays, when you debate with the municipal polices and the reivindications, the demands they have, you notice that there is will or a need of the municipal police to become a real police and to unify with other police, military or civil police of the state. But they weren't thought for that. The municipal guard is an asset guard. It has a relevant role, yes. When we were talking in the beginning, you know, what is public security and how you do public security? Well, if you put light on the street, if you have a square that is well treated, if you have the doors of the gates of a school well guarded, well, that's a role of the military, the municipal police. The municipality, the city, will be protected by the municipal police. And that's work with the prevention too. The municipal police is a police for prevention. Nowadays, they really demand to be able to use air guns, and there is a project law for that, of a law for that. But it is a subversion of their role, really. To me, this role of armed police, you have the military police that is also present in the municipalities. But in some tastes where you have, like mine, which is a small state, the civil, sometimes you don't have a municipal police there, and the military police of the state is the one that takes care of everything. So the municipal police is a fantastic instrument as a prevention police to inform the other polices, right? State polices. This municipal police has a view of the city. It knows the city. They knows the city is where we live. The city is where the crime happens, right? I would work more strongly on the role of municipal polices than any other. It's not an ostensive police. It is an asset police. And their role is to prevent, to ensure, to inform. They have a different role. It's not an armed police to enforce law. I work much more with that point of view. I think that deep inside, this debate could remain here. I'm quiet here. You know that I speak a lot, I talk a lot, so I'm trying to be quiet here. But I believe that we've been here for like an hour and a half, and our proposal to bring shorter boards of discussion, you know, is good to leave you with a good taste, and saying I want more of that. I would like to ask for you to talk a little bit as a closure, inviting those who are attending this meeting in the audience. I would call the attention to two boards that are going to happen, debate boards that are going to happen in on organic laws of the civil police and the military polices. We have to be very attentive as to what is coming ahead. So in 1988, we had something that didn't look forward as to what would be happening. So the Constitution made in 1988 reproduced the legislation of 1969 and didn't change structures. Everything we see today may have been happening. Defects that we see today is perhaps the lack of future vision of what would happen. In 1969, we had a lot to do with internal security rather than public security, and the reform of the police in Brazil became stuck as they were in 1969. This should be very clear. We have before us an opportunity to modernize the area of public security now. I would like to hand over a final closure by each one of you, for each one of you. And this session had several technical problems in the backdrops of the technicians. So I will put the initial cover that was programmed. Instead of being an initial film, it will be a final film. It's only 3 minutes in length. So I'll hand over the floor to the ex-minister Raul Jungmann. Minister Jungmann, I really thank you, and I sincerely acknowledge your role. I don't want to put you in the middle of a bonfire, but please lend us a closure speech. Well, what I'd like to say is the forum that has helped to build with your team, Samira and all, is one of the most important things that we have in public security in Brazil. I think you are mature, you have information, you all have function of contributing with us, contributing with other governments, and I believe that you are, in fact, having a very important privileged position regarding public security. So participating with you here is something that inevitable. I cannot avoid doing this. So it's a great honor and joy for me to participate here. Congratulations to you. Let you continue in this decisive work. You are pushing things forward, really pushing things forward. I'm sure that you've done this for public security in Brazil, which is a public asset and which Brazilians should not enjoy, do not enjoy the way they should and could. You know, so I have to thank you in several aspects, particularly for our culture, our advancement in terms of custom and habits. And I've had the opportunity of hearing and learning with Margarete, this woman who gives a clear example on the capacity of serious, competent, studious women and her participation, which is so important in the legislative branch of the government and in other branches of the government. Thank you very much, and I'm available to you at any time. Congresswoman, for you, a quick greeting. Thanking you very much. And we are here facing a very important moment for Brazil, and it's great to know that we have people like you and Minister Jungmann to help to articulate a model for public security, a model that is not afraid to clearly state that it is worth valuing democratic institutions. It's worth to change what has not worked or that does not regard the building of citizenship and the defense of life. Congresswoman, please. Yeah, I'm very thankful for the opportunity of being here in such a rich debate with Minister Raul Jungmann, whom I admire very much. He can't imagine how I follow up his work. And it's for a politician like him, it is an honor for Brazil. But I have to admit or acknowledge the important role of the Forum for Society, not only for the quality of the data, for producing science, for producing sources of research, depth, and innovation. You've had prizes for innovation, and we in Piauí have had the joy of being given such prizes. One such prize, Innovation Prize. The forum is very important. It has a marking presence, and I believe that any institution, governmental institution, can substitute or get any near the quality of what the forum produces. For me, it's great joy because every time I come to participate in an event, whether it be as an audience or like this today as one of the speakers, it is a challenge because I oblige myself to update and to study a little more because otherwise it'll be shameful for you. Thank you very much to you and Samira. Vinicius de Moraes, the poet, used to say, it comes in a book, we do not make friends, he said. We acknowledge each other. So I'm very thankful for the universe and understand you as friends too, fully acknowledged. I'm very sorry for not having gotten to the depth as necessary for these issues, but there is a time limitation and my own limitations, and this has had a consequence. Thank you very much. Enjoy these debates, and I will be here to watch other debates. Thank you for your presence, Congresswoman. And before we go to the clip, I would like to use a mute to show how the graphic design of this event was done in visual terms. Yes, perfect. Hello to the audience. The depth of the debate was enormous. And here we have a summary, a visual summary, like a map of the main ideas that were put forth by you. Here at your left on top, we have the room of Rodrigo Maia to recovering the territory and integrate policies. To the right, in this little list, you have the talk of Margarete talking about transversality of the theme, and security is a key to everything. All the talk of Minister Jungmann about criminality and the necessity of separating the dealer from the user in drugs, and the data brought by Renato of the increase of deaths and assassinations. It's a general panorama of what was said here today. This facilitation is going to be put in the site as a language to summarize what has been said here. Those who are attending this forum and who might want to give contributions and proposals, I would like them to use the our site, because our proposals generate several contributions, and the forum will be committed to give answer to all demands made. I would like to close by saying that, by asking Caio to put the subtitle of the initial clip as a final clip for our activity. What would be the initial clip will have the final clip. My definition of being a woman is the great creative potential of the world. It's a gift, a strength that nobody can explain. You have 1,000 uses, you have to resist. Woman is always afraid and suspicious. Every time I come out of my home, should I take this road that's dark? I'm afraid of getting raped or assaulted. Best thing is to put people inside my vehicle. To combat that, you don't need only just 1 or 2 initiatives. You really have to look at the midterm. Last year, we invested 5 million reals in 3 years, and we followed that path for several years. We developed Uber for civil police in attending women in danger. If you spend too long in a place, there would be a person, you have to be we should be very attentive, and with a simple touch, we can activate the police. With the capillarity of Uber, we can have a great capillarity and reach many women in danger. There is domestic violence that can also activate an Uber with the military police inside so that they can get there in no time. All you have to do is to ask for help. I believe it is important for companies to have initiatives to help women to become safer and feel secure. This work will make it so that everything that is done will have a bigger scale. The world is changing, and we will leave a positive legacy for the future, and our next generations will not have to face what we are facing, and that is very gratifying. It's like the way I define being a woman nowadays. I will leave a safe legacy. Okay. Thank you very much to all ladies and gentlemen. Sorry about the technical inconveniences, but that is the characteristic of a virtual event. But doubtlessly, the quality of the debate showed that there's much to be heard. As Deputy Margarete Coelho said, it limits us in what we want to speak, yes, but the quality of her talk as a congressman and the minister's talk left us with, I want a little more of that sensation. This will inaugurate the other 29 activities for our meeting, and I hope that you enjoy, participate a lot, to build a public security that is more fair and that ensures citizenship and life of each one of us, because that's what Brazil needs. Well, really, we have to make public security to be less ideological and just rhetorics, but more ensuring of life and rights and citizenship. Thank you, Congresswoman. Thanks, ex-Minister, and we're here available to you.